Hello and welcome back to the Project Hercules Diaries. What do you do when your good lady buys a light fitting and you fit it up and then she decides she doesn't like it? And then she buys a different light fitting and you fit that up and she decides she doesn't like it. And then you end up fitting a third light fitting in the house. You end up with a couple of LED posh light fittings, far too posh for a shed, but you know, casualties of war, collateral damage and all that, they are now in my custodianship and firmly bolted to the shed wall at the very end over the shaper, and it's given us a beautiful light area now in which to work. So one of the things that's been on my list for a long time is to recommission this beautiful machine while the people that are around that have used them in the past are still around and can show me how to drive it. So I have used the shaper, but it was a very long time ago, so I could do with a bit of a refresher course. It needs a new motor. The motor's right underneath just there. So it definitely needs a new motor, and there are a selection of other broken motors lying around that will probably need to go to the big motor house in the sky, or let the scrap fairies come and collect them. So this whole general area needs a bit of a tidy. That motor at the back is driven by this pulley to an old car gearbox. I think it's a Morris Oxford, somebody says, but I could be wrong on that. So that is one of the speed controls, and then through this massive bicycle chain to this wheel here, which then drives the crank, which operates the clacker to shape the piece that you bolted on here. So it's quite an antiquated piece of kit, but you do apparently get a lovely finish, and I would dearly like to get that commissioned. So not strictly related to the project, but I would at least want to do one part for the bike on this machine, and then every machine will have been used in the production of the Hercules chop. So other news, while I'm thinking about that, well, we have managed to make between us, which actually means Bob's made it, the bottom of the spring retainer for the decompressor on the head, which is on the bench just behind me. Right here, so that is where the spring will sit in situ in the head. It should be really good fun listening to people when you park it up wondering why there's only one valve, and why the valve is manually operated. So that two nuts will go on the top of our decompressor, which will look like a valve, and that allows us to adjust the spring tension. There's an outer spring and there's an inner spring. Just like on the Norton, we have a lovely, beautifully crafted piece at the bottom here, which has a reamed hole, which is a nice fit on that piece of silver steel, which is also in a reamed hole in the head. So there's plenty of support for the valve. You've got the thickness of the head, and you've got that additional thickness there. So that step in the bottom is to allow the gas coming out of these holes to escape and not block them off with the if that was flush, if that boss wasn't there, then you would be covering up part of the holes there. So that sits on that reamed hole sits on that piece of silver steel, or will support the valve, and then the springs go over the top. I keep calling it a valve, but we know it's a decompressor, don't we? And then there'll be a lever across here, and you pull the lever to push it down to start the bike, let go of the lever when it's cranking round. It should be quite a fun procedure to get the bike going. So that's one of the finished items now, the complete finished item. The spark plugs, you remember from last time, those holes for the spark plugs are in, and the spark plugs in the bottom of the head have come through just nicely. So there's our two sparking plugs in the bottom of the head. So that the head is pretty much finished. It's just a case now of finishing the decompressor, which looks like a valve, which is on the big lathe over there. Here, actually, I said the big lathe, but it's the South Bend, which is the medium-sized lathe. So we've done a very light skim of this face of that valve of unknown provenance. I don't think it's full of sulfur. I did do the test where we heated it, measured the balance point. Balance point didn't move, so we think it is a solid valve. So we're going to start using this. It is quite hard, but it's not impossibly hard. We have managed to take a light skim with one of these tipped tools here. So that looks quite promising, and if it is quite hard, when we do the final diameter of that shaft, we can use the spindle grinder to give us a lovely finish in that reamed hole in the head. The spindle grinder is just behind me here, so we'll end up with the valve in here if we can fit it in, because it's quite long. This turns the spindle one way, this turns the grinding wheel the other way, and you grind the spindle. We used it to make the pin that drives the sleeve drive, if you remember. Just mind your head, don't lean forward too much, because in the days before health and safety, that's when this type of thing was around. So they are the jobs for the weekend. It's a long weekend here in the UK, but I do have a few other things to do. Hopefully we'll get time to get a fair bit done, and update you on those. The last job for the weekend will be one step to the left, like the time warp, drilling the cotton reel shape, which is the gearbox case outer. So I'm going to drill 3 holes in there all the way through, so they're in line top to bottom, and then we mark out the gearbox plates that bolt the gearbox to the frame, so then we can offer it up and bolt it in situ finally. So there's a fair bit to do, but it's a beautiful day. Not too hot, but the sun has just decided to come out, and it's a long weekend, so there's a lot to do, but it's all to play for right now. So as usual, thank you for watching, and more updates will follow.